We look at these incredible monuments, the pyramids, the great cathedrals, the skyscrapers that define our cities, and we see them as these amazing symbols of human achievement. But what if we've been telling that story all wrong? Today we're going to step into the shadows of these great stones to uncover the hidden human cost of building them.
So let's just try to flip the script on how we see these structures. When you look at a famous landmark, you probably think about its beauty, or its power, maybe even progress. But what if we started asking a totally different question? What if we asked, how many lives did this building cost? That one question, it changes everything. And it's really the key to what we're digging into today. To even understand where a question like that comes from, we have to go back and look at the historical shadow that these massive stones have been casting for centuries.
Okay, so humanity has always built amazing things. I mean, temples, pyramids, palaces, but think about who we remember. The history books, they're full of the pharaohs, the kings, the architects. They are almost completely silent about the countless people whose tired arms and bent backs actually did the work. We call them slaves, a word that just kind of strips them of their humanity. But they weren't just a label. They were people, with hopes and fears and souls, whose stories are literally buried beneath the very stones they were forced to move.
Now you might be thinking, okay, that's all just ancient history. But here's the really shocking part. This whole thing, it never really ended. It just got a new name. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Forced labor never disappeared. It just rebranded itself. What was once openly and honestly called slavery is now hidden behind these much softer, more modern terms, right? Labor exploitation, human trafficking, degrading conditions. The words might sound less harsh, but for the people living through it, the reality is just as brutal.
And this is what that reality looks like today. People are lured away from their homes with these incredible promises of good jobs and a better life. But the second they arrive, their passports are taken away. They're forced to work 14-hour days, trapped in a fake debt to their bosses that they can never, ever repay. They end up living in these sheds or horribly overcrowded rooms, just living in constant fear. It's this hidden, vicious cycle of exploitation, and it's happening right now, building the very cities that we live in. And these aren't just isolated incidents, a few bad apples here and there. No way. When you actually step back and look at the big picture, you see this really disturbing pattern, an unbroken chain that stretches across all of human history. The pattern is it's undeniable. In ancient Egypt, you had slaves building the pyramids for pharaohs. Then, fast forward to the colonial era, you had enslaved Africans building entire cities for European empires. And today, you have migrant workers building our modern skylines under shockingly similar conditions. The names, the faces, the places, they all change. But that core dynamic of power exploiting labor for these massive projects, it has remained disturbingly constant.
And this all leads to a really powerful realization from the source material. These constructions, admired today, are also memorials of pain. It just forces you to see these landmarks not just as symbols of achievement, but as silent monuments to all the suffering that made them possible in the first place.
But the cost isn't just measured in physical labor, in sweat and exhaustion. There's a much deeper psychological wound here that we really need to try and understand.
Yeah, this goes so far beyond physical hardship. It's this profound psychological wound that experts call moral injury. It's damage done to a person's core sense of right and wrong. And modern research actually confirms that today's labor exploitation is the direct heir to historical slavery. It inflicts the exact same deep scars, depression, anxiety, and this devastating loss of self. So how does this even happen? Well, it's a process. First, the work is forced. There's zero choice involved. Second, all of that immense effort has no recognized value for the worker. They get nothing for it. This leads to a total loss of meaning. It just negates the creative human spirit of building something. And the final tragic result of all that? The very soul of the worker is damaged, leading to that deep, lasting psychological trauma.
So where does all this leave us? I mean, recognizing the problem is obviously the first step. The next, and much harder step, is to ask how we can even begin to rebuild a sense of justice.
This brings us to the core idea of this entire explainer, and it's this. What is raised on top of pain is never truly solid. The stones themselves might stand for centuries, sure, but a society that builds itself on injustice has a foundation that is fundamentally unstable. It's a powerful metaphor for everything.
And that leaves us with a really critical question. And it's not about the past. It's about our future. How do we build a world where every single stone, every brick, every steel beam stands as a testament to human value and dignity, and not to submission and exploitation.
Let's end on this final, pretty haunting thought. The stones keep silent, but the pain that raised them continues to speak. It's a powerful reminder that history is never really silent. We just have to choose to listen. Thanks for tuning in.